All right, in this little video, I'm going to give you a sense of what we talked about the first meeting. This is mainly for Connor, but also a little rehash for Eden. So first I want to show you the Teams site. So you've all been invited to it. So I just clicked on my button, and you want to make sure you find your way to the Files part in Posts. There's nothing there, but if you go to Files, there's a collection of stuff. So let me just show you real quickly what's in there and maybe how to make use of it or make sense of it. So first, in the case competition folder, that has a couple of important things. It has some dates, but it has the case. And then I also did a little artificial intelligence AI chat GPT kind of thing where I asked the model how we might go about working on this case. So the case is up here, Shadowwood. So if you click on that, you can look at the case. I'd like you to do that soon so we can start talking about the case. So this has kind of this has information that you're given, and then you got to kind of do the things that it asks you to do for analyzing this thing. So we'll talk about this in a future class. So make sure you look at that, read that. I also, oh boy, did I just get rid of my Teams? Let's do that again. This document here, I asked, actually I asked Claude, which is another AI model, how to go about analyzing a case, and it gives a bunch of tasks. So market analysis, it talks about, or gives 4 different bullet points, things to think about to analyze this case. Property assessment, financial analysis, which is important for any case, analysis, tenanting strategy. Yeah, it just gives a lot of things to think about. So this is kind of a little framework for thinking through a case, and we'll talk about we'll probably talk about some of this as we work on the case together. So that's an important document. Let's go back to Teams and show you the other folder. Goodness, I'm not very good at navigating this right now. There we go. So I've also created a folder that has a bunch of articles I've been dumping in there, and the main idea is just to give you a little bit of sense of terminology and things to think about with retail. So you can see that there's articles numbered 1 through 8, and then there's this big report. Down here there is an AI generated summary of those articles, and so let's just look at this one, articles 1 through 4 summary. So it's going to be looking at these 4. If we look at that, it has the little summary of it. So this article, Domestic Tourism Trends in New York City and LA, it talks about what's going on. Then it has a few terms, a few key terms that probably good to start working on our vocabulary and building a lexicon of terms that we understand. So core-based statistical area, captured market trade area, that's a super important one. Psychographics, demographics are all important. Another one, restaurant. This one's about restaurants as an important part of retail real estate. So some more more terminology in the article. Properties, high interest rates, more important terms. So you get the idea. So I think it'd be good for you to not only look at the summaries, but also to look at the articles themselves. So for instance, this tourism and retail report, just open it up and take a look at the thing. Read through it, because even just reading this will give you a little bit of a sense of what retail real estate is concerned with, what kind of things matter to it. So anyway, that's one set of resources. is the articles. And then let's see, the other thing well, let me do this. Let me show you my AI tool of my preferred AI tool, and it's Claude, but you can use others, ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. I asked Claude the other day, let's see if we can find my prompt. Please explain to me the importance of traffic count in retail real estate. And so it gave me all this information that I could look at and get a better sense of traffic. This I kind of asked Claude to explain something a little bit more. I found a term in the first part, and continuing the conversation, I said, what do you mean by this term? And then it gives me a whole lot more information. So my suggestion to all of you is to use these AI models as a way to help you, as a tool to kind of help you learn. It's generally going to be pretty good. I've found Claude to be really good in terms of explaining things. Let's see here. The one voice that I use, you can pick a style, and I pick the explanatory style. So whenever it gives me answers like this that are kind of like it's teaching me. So it's a good way to use these tools. Lastly, we talked a little bit about numbers, some numerical analysis, and let me just get back to what I showed the first group. Looking at this net lease tenant report, this has some kind of good information about it. So these are different retail stores that are for sale. So it has some kind of important information about the sales side of things. This is really going to be really important in our case because we will want some sort of value. This has all sorts of good information. Just looking at here, Advanced Auto Parts has 5,000 locations, has some things about cap rates, which we'll talk about here in a second, but that helps us figure out how much a building can sell for. This talks about annual rents and the typical square foot, the size of a property, how much they have in sales. So a lot of good information, excuse me, in terms of analyzing retail real estate. So this thing is, I think, 100 pages long or so. Definitely don't need to look at everything, but this might be handy later on when we get into valuation and start thinking about how much a property is worth. So let me just do a quick little bit of math, and then we'll wrap this video up. So I'm gonna stop here with Bojangles as our comparison or our example. So let me stick Bojangles over there on that side, and then I'm gonna put Excel over here. Let me get a new spreadsheet going. All right. So the first thing that you guys need to understand, this is a super important term, and that is the cap rate. So you see that, right here, cap rate correlation. Over here, you got the oops, that's market cap. That's something different. The cap, that's this column right here, is called the cap rate. And so it's defined as NOI divided by the sales price. All right, so if you take one number and divide it by another number, you get this thing called a cap rate, and it's expressed in percentage terms. So whenever you hear a 5 cap, that means it's 5.25%. And then there's one other new term here, this NOI. Let's go ahead and talk about what that is, net operating income. So that is basically the net income or the profit from a particular property. So just real simply, where this comes from is we're going to have total rent paid. We're going to have expense reimbursements paid. And I'll talk about what each of these mean here in a second. Reimbursements paid less expenses paid by landlord. All right, so let's just talk about this real quick. So this is defining net operating income. So if we look over here, there was somewhere where I had the lease. Okay, average annual rent, $145,000. So that's actually going to be a really, we could probably simplify that and just call that net operating income, but we're going to put in $145,000. And then with retail tenants, it's very common to have what is called a triple net lease. And that just means that the tenant pays all of the expenses. So let's just say that the landlord would have paid $45,000 in expenses. I'm going to make that a negative number. They would have paid $45,000 in expenses, except that with a triple net lease, and let me write that term down, triple net, that means that the tenant pays all expenses. Or if they don't pay them directly, then they pay them back to the landlord. They reimburse the landlord. So the tenant is going to pay $45,000 towards the expenses. So that exactly offsets those numbers. And what you're left with is the NOI. So if I take this number and that number and that number, I get $145,000 of net operating income. And we can probably treat this thing right here, this average annual rent, as the NOI. So we got the NOI and we got the sales price. Up here, we can kind of do some math to get the cap rate. So looking over here, let's say that it's sold. I'm just looking across all these things. The average sales price is about $3 million. So let me just do that for this one. If we have NOI of $145,000 and we got sales price of $3 million, then my cap rate is going to be NOI divided by sales price. So this number divided by that number. And again, in percentage terms, that would be a 4.83 cap. So if we look over here along all these cap rates, that would be on the low side. Let's see, there's 1, 2 in the 4s. Most of them are in the 5s and 6s. So this would be a little bit of a low cap rate. Notice if I change the sales price, so if I put $2,750,000, my cap rate is going to change. It's going to go up from 4.83 to a little over 5.25. So this is one more really important relationship, and I'll go ahead and stop this video after this. Sales price is going to be equal to NOI divided by the cap rate. So all I've done is rearrange this relationship, kind of algebraically solving for sales price, and we get this relationship. So another super important kind of metric way of calculating things. We're going to take the NOI and use a cap rate to come up with the value that we think. So let's see here. If we have a rent on some different property of $175,000, and we have a cap rate that is, if I look at the average of all the, well, let's go up here. The average, it says, is was a 5.37% cap rate. So if we use that 0.0537, we can estimate the sales price for a particular store by taking the NOI divided by the cap rate. So doing this formula right here, and I get an estimated price of this, a little over $3.25 million. And by the way, we would never want to have this number in our reports because real estate doesn't trade down to the dollar or the penny. We'd probably round this number to $3.25 million, just because that's kind of the closest nice round number to that. So that's a really handy way of doing valuation, and I think that'll do it for this little video. 15 minutes worth. You might go back and watch it again just to, especially these numbers parts, or pause it and think about what's going on. Rewind these last few minutes to think about the cap rates, NOI, and then this relationship with sales price. These are super important things that we'll definitely be talking more about in the future. So I'll go ahead and stop here, and we'll see you later.